Most of your body runs on absolute autopilot. Your heart beats, your liver filters, and your digestion hums along without a single conscious thought. But your breath is an evolutionary anomaly. It's the only survival system nature built with a manual override, letting you consciously stop it on demand. And we hit that override switch all day long without realizing it. Think about the last time you typed a tricky password or scrolled through a stressful newsfeed. You likely experienced email apnea, the modern habit of unconsciously holding your breath or breathing in shallow, jagged bursts while staring at a digital screen. When you gasp or pause your breath while typing, you effectively lock your diaphragm in place. You turn a fluid muscle into a rigid wall of tension. That physical lock sends a massive, urgent distress signal straight up the vagus nerve. This pathway acts like a biological fiber optic cable, carrying that alarm directly to your amygdala, the ancient threat-detecting lizard brain. Because the primitive brain lacks modern context, it interprets a locked diaphragm as a sign of a literal predator in the room. This triggers a panic response, bathing your system in cortisol and adrenaline simply because you were checking your phone. To understand why we default to this baseline arrhythmia and tension, we have to look back at where the habit began. For the vast majority of us, this instinctual breath holding traces back to the profound biological shock of our very first breath. Consider the standard hospital delivery. You transition from a warm, dark, gravity-free womb into a freezing, brightly lit room. Your spine is wrenched straight, you are hit with cold air, and you are forced to aggressively expand lungs that have never been used. It feels like absolute fire. Faced with that sensory overload, an infant's nervous system learns a primary coping mechanism: to hold the breath and harden the musculature to protect itself from the overwhelming intensity of that first burn. This creates a lifelong armor of tension. Because the nervous system doesn't differentiate between extreme pain and extreme pleasure, recognizing only a singular high-voltage signal of intensity, restricting your breath to avoid one inevitably caps the other. By training our bodies to numb the bad, we accidentally lower our entire biological ceiling for feeling the good. Breaking that armor requires changing the mechanics of how air gets in. Chronic mouth breathing creates a state of low-grade sympathetic stress, as your lizard brain registers an open, unfiltered airway as a vulnerability. Nasal breathing, however, is a non-negotiable requirement for optimal physiology. The nose doesn't just filter air, it conditions it. As air spirals through the nasal cavity, it picks up nitric oxide, a potent vasodilator that physically opens your blood vessels, allowing for significantly better oxygen absorption in the lungs. But even with nasal breathing, daily stress can cause our lung tissue to degrade. To counter this, modern science points to a manual override called the physiological sigh, a double inhale through the nose, followed by a long, relaxed exhale. Deep inside our lungs are microscopic air sacs called alveoli, resembling clusters of grapes.
Under stress, these tiny balloons collapse and stick together, reducing your ability to exchange oxygen. The mechanical genius of the sigh is in the second, sharp intake of air. It creates just enough pressure to snap those collapsed air sacs back open, forcing the lungs to full capacity. Consciously initiating this sigh immediately hijacks the vagus nerve. It forcefully pulls the nervous system out of reptilian panic and drops it into a state of profound parasympathetic calm. What happens if we push this manual override to its absolute extreme? If we intentionally overbreathe while the body is physically at rest, we can shift our internal chemistry so drastically that it rivals a macrodose of psychedelics. This relies on the Bohr effect. By pulling in massive amounts of oxygen at rest, you blow off huge amounts of CO2, raising your blood alkalinity. In this state, your red blood cells grip onto their oxygen molecules much tighter, paradoxically delivering less oxygen to certain parts of the brain. As a defense mechanism against this rapid chemical shift, the brain temporarily dials down the default mode network, the area responsible for your ego, your rigid thought loops, and your sense of linear time. With the ego center's control temporarily suspended, The massive surge of biological energy from the breathing is diverted into deeper layers of the nervous system. This allows the body to do a form of house cleaning, processing stagnant emotional signals and rewiring neural pathways previously blocked by tension. Once you master the mechanics of your breath, your perspective begins to shift. You move from the realm of individual psychology into an inescapable physical reality. This aligns with an ancient Greek philosophical framework that draws a line between two ways of living, existing in an oblivion of beliefs versus living in undeniable truth. In this framework, rigid beliefs and mental dogmas are a primary catalyst for physiological distress. When we cling to opinions, we naturally move into a defensive us versus them posture, triggering the same shallow survival breathing that keeps the nervous system in a state of chronic alarm. Truth, however, isn't a mental argument, it's a rhythm. Like a healthy breath, it simply functions to solve problems and maintain balance. Conscious breathing pulls us out of the illusion of our dividing beliefs and drops us back into the undeniable shared truth of our biology. The final realization of this shared truth is staggering. The air on Earth is a completely closed loop, endlessly recycled resource. We are all breathing from the exact same bubble. Molecules currently expanding your lungs right now were once circulating in the bloodstream of Julius Caesar. Those same molecules were exhaled by the Buddha over 2 millennia ago. This leads to a powerful experiment. What if, during your next heated argument over clashing beliefs, you consciously decided to sync your breathing rhythm with your opponent's? You would be weaponizing empathy at a biological level. By matching their physiological truth, you bypass their cognitive resistance, forcing two nervous systems into a state of shared physical connection before a single word of the argument is ever resolved.